All right, ready to dive deep.
Always.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Today we've got a fascinating source, a talk by Osho, unpacking the teachings of Guru Nanak,
Oh, wow.
the founder of Sikhism.
Right.
Now, for those who haven't encountered Osho, he was known for some pretty unconventional takes on spiritual traditions.
Definitely.
So get ready for some fresh perspectives.
Yeah.
We're not just going to understand what Nanak said,
Right.
but how Osho uses his words to challenge common assumptions about prayer, service, and finding truth.
It's a really interesting approach. Osho starts by highlighting a principle from Nanak that I think often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
That we're constantly making demands of God, do this, give me that. But Nanak suggests that the true path is about gratitude for what's already been given.
That's a powerful reframe.
Yeah.
It makes you think about how often I approach things from a place of, I need this.
Right.
Or I want that, instead of appreciating what I already have.
Absolutely. And then Osho goes on to contrast the words Satya, which means truth, with Sahib, which means master or lord.
Okay.
He argues that simply acknowledging Satya is just accepting a fact, cold, hard truth. But relating to Sahib implies something more like devotion, love.
Yeah.
It's a relationship, not just knowledge.
I can see how that distinction adds a whole new layer to how we think about our relationship with the divine.
Yeah.
Not just acknowledging a higher power,
Right.
but about cultivating a loving connection.
And to illustrate this, he uses the analogy of a beggar and a giver.
Okay, I'm curious. How does that play out here?
So when someone begs, it creates a sense of obligation, distance.
Yeah.
But true giving, like God's grace, flows freely. There's no demand, no expectation of return.
That's a great point. It's like, are we approaching our loved ones, our friends, even strangers, with that beggar mentality?
Right.
Always demanding, always expecting. Or are we giving freely without needing anything in return? Which feels better.
Such a powerful question to reflect on. It connects to how Osho interprets prayer. He suggests that genuine prayer isn't about presenting a wish list,
Right.
but about recognizing the abundance that's already present.
So less about asking for what we lack and more about cultivating gratitude for what we have.
Exactly. It's about shifting our focus from please give me this to thank you for all that is.
That's a pretty radical shift, especially in a world that tells us we need more, more, more.
Right.
It makes you wonder if that craving is actually blocking us from experiencing the abundance that's already there.
And that leads into another striking image that Osho uses. He says fixating on problems is like only seeing the thorns on a rose bush. We become so focused on the negative, on what's wrong, that we miss the beauty, the potential.
So he's saying if we're constantly looking for thorns, that's all we're going to see.
Exactly. We miss the whole picture. And Osho suggests that a true devotee views challenges not as punishment, but as part of a larger purposeful design. Those thorns might actually be there to protect the flower. They're both part of the same life force.
That's a powerful way to reframe how we view obstacles. And it actually reminds me of something else Osho said. Building on Nanak's questioning. What offering can we bring to God?
Oh, tell me more about that.
He uses this question to critique what he calls empty rituals. He's like, we build these elaborate temples, make all these offerings, but isn't all of that ultimately made from what God already provided?
Yeah, it's such a profound insight.
Right.
Osho seems to be suggesting that true devotion, the most genuine offering we can make, is realizing that we are the offering. Our very existence is a gift, a manifestation of the divine.
So it's not about what we bring to God, but about recognizing that we're already a part of God.
Exactly. And that realization is far more valuable than any material offering.
It really flips the script on traditional notions of worship.
Yeah.
It's not about what we do, but about who we are at our core.
Right, and that's where things start to get really interesting. Osho then delves into Nanak's focus on Amrit Vela, that special time at dawn and dusk.
Yes. Tell me more about that. What's Osho's take?
Well, Sikhs consider it incredibly potent for spiritual practice.
Okay.
And he explains it as the moment when our consciousness shifts gears. Like waking up or falling asleep.
Yeah.
It's that in-between space where we're closest to the unbodied self within.
It's like catching that moment right before you fall asleep where you're not quite asleep, but not quite awake either.
Exactly.
But how do we actually capture that? It feels almost impossible.
Well, that's where the real work begins. Osho emphasizes constant awareness.
Right.
Being fully present in everything we do.
Right.
Eating, working, taking a shower. It all becomes a form of devotion. when we shed those distracting thoughts and really tune into the experience.
Yeah.
This practice, this cultivation of awareness, is what allows us to perceive that subtle shift,
Right.
Amrit Vela, where we can potentially glimpse that eternal aspect within.
So instead of just going through the motions, we're encouraged to truly experience each moment with our full attention.
Exactly.
And by doing so, we become more attuned to those subtle shifts in our consciousness.
Precisely. It's about cultivating a heightened state of awareness that allows us to perceive those deeper dimensions of reality. And this focus on presence naturally leads us to Osho's next point, the limitations of language when it comes to experiencing the divine.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, Osho picks up on Nanak's question. What words can we speak to God to win his love?
Right.
And his answer is silence.
Silence. Really?
He compares it to the way lovers feel. Sometimes feelings are so deep, so profound, that words just feel inadequate. The truest connection to the divine, Osho suggests, transcends language altogether. It's not about reciting fancy prayers or finding the perfect words, but about cultivating a state of being. A state of overflowing gratitude and pure being that doesn't need words to express itself.
So it's less about what we say and more about how we are.
Yeah.
About cultivating a state of being that embodies that connection to the divine.
Exactly. And this idea of moving beyond words actually ties in beautifully with Osho's interpretation of Nanak's ideas about karma and kripadrishti, action and grace. He explains that karma, or action, leads to the physical body, while kripadrishti, or grace, is what opens the door to liberation.
I've always struggled with the idea of surrender and grace.
Yeah.
It feels passive somehow.
Right.
But the way you're explaining it makes me wonder if it's more about letting go of the need to control everything, to surrender to something larger than ourselves.
That's a beautiful insight, and I think it gets to the heart of what Osho is trying to convey. He's suggesting that we earn our earthly existence through actions, through karma. But true freedom, true liberation, comes from a state of surrender, from recognizing a power greater than ourselves.
It's like we're responsible for our actions in this material world.
Yeah.
But true liberation comes from connecting to something that transcends our limited understanding.
Yes. Exactly. And this idea of surrendering to something larger than ourselves takes us to one of Osho's most provocative interpretations of Nanak's teachings, his challenge to the very concept of man-made temples.
Okay, challenging the concept of man-made temples. That's a bold statement.
It is.
I'm all ears.
Well, Osho takes Nanak's teaching that God is uncreated and runs with it. He basically says that any temple we build is limited by its creator's vision. It can never truly encompass the vastness of the divine.
So he's not saying that physical temples are bad, but that they're just limited.
Yeah, they can become a way of boxing in the divine, trying to contain something that's by its very nature uncontainable. Osho suggests that the true temple is existence itself. The birds singing, the wind in the trees, the stars in the sky. He says we belong to that temple, not the ones we build.
That's a really beautiful image. It makes you realize how often we try to limit the divine, to make it fit into our preconceived notions.
Right. And this idea of expanding our view of the divine leads directly into Osho's discussion of Nanak's emphasis on seva, selfless service.
Okay.
But he's quick to point out that this isn't about charity, not about doing good deeds from a sense of superiority.
Right. There's a difference between giving out of obligation and giving from a place of genuine connection, right? So how does Osho define true seva?
He says it's about recognizing the divine spark in everyone we serve. We're not bestowing a favor. We're grateful for the opportunity to connect with the universal spirit that's present in all beings.
It's like that saying, you can see God in the face of everyone you meet.
Exactly.
It's a reminder that we're all interconnected. We're all part of this grand cosmic tapestry.
Absolutely. And it transforms even the most mundane interactions into opportunities for spiritual growth.
Right.
It's not about what we do for others, but about recognizing our inherent unity with them. And this perspective, this shift in consciousness, brings us back to Osho's discussion of the role of the guru in Nanak's teachings.
Yes.
Yeah.
He placed the guru even above scriptures, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, it's a bold statement, but he explains it beautifully. You see, scriptures are static. They're open to interpretation.
Right.
And often get bogged down in dogma.
Yeah.
But a living guru transmits wisdom directly. Their very presence is a teaching. And it's less about what they say and more about the energy they embody.
So it's not just about intellectual knowledge, but about a direct experience of the truth that the guru embodies.
Precisely. And here's where things get really nuanced. Osho acknowledges that even a guru's words can be distorted, which is why he emphasizes the importance of finding a living source of truth, a source that resonates with you on a deep personal level.
But isn't there a danger in relying too heavily on a guru? What about developing our own discernment, our own inner compass?
That's a crucial point, and it's one that Osho seems to address when he brings up Nanak's own questioning. He quotes Nanak saying, "If I knew everything, I still couldn't describe it, for it cannot be spoken."
Wow. That's profound. It's like Nanak is acknowledging the limits of language, even the guru's ability to convey the ultimate truth.
Yeah.
It leaves us with this big question. If truth can't be put into words, where else can it be found?
And this is where Osho's own role becomes really intriguing. He wasn't claiming to be a traditional guru in the lineage of Nanak, but he was offering a way of seeing a perspective that could shake things up and open us to new possibilities.
He was kind of like a guide pointing us in the right direction, but ultimately leaving it up to us to find our own way.
Exactly. He was a provocateur, challenging us to question everything we thought we knew. And that's the real invitation of this deep dive, isn't it? It's not about accepting everything Osho says is gospel truth,
right,
but about using his insights as a springboard for our own exploration.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think about all those times I've gotten caught up in trying to find the right answer, the perfect path. But maybe it's less about finding a destination and more about embracing the journey itself.
That's such a beautiful insight. And it brings us back to Osho's emphasis on Amrit Vela, on cultivating that heightened state of awareness, that mindful presence in every aspect of our lives.
So it's not just about catching those fleeting moments at dawn and dusk, but about integrating that awareness into everything we do.
Right. It's about training our perception to see beyond the surface, to sense the interconnectedness of all things.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the divine in the beggar we pass on the street, the customer we serve in our shop, even in the dishes we wash at night.
It's about dissolving the illusion of separation and recognizing the unity that underlies all of existence.
Yes.
And that, in essence, is the heart of Nanak's message, as interpreted by Osho.
And it's a message that has the potential to radically transform our lives. Imagine living with that kind of awareness, that sense of interconnectedness and gratitude.
It would definitely shift our perspective from one of scarcity and lack to one of abundance and appreciation.
Absolutely. And it would transform how we relate to the world and to each other. It would change everything.
You know, it's funny, as we're talking about all this, I keep coming back to that point about how we often try to contain the divine.
Right.
To make it fit, you know, within our limited understanding, like building those elaborate temples when the real temple is the whole universe.
It is a powerful image. It speaks to that very human need to try and control, and define things that are ultimately beyond our grasp. But it's when we let go of that need, when we surrender to the mystery, that we open ourselves up to a much richer experience.
It's like we're trying to fit the ocean into a teacup. We miss the vastness, the depth, the power.
And isn't that what Osho is guiding us toward with his interpretation of Nanak? It's not about clinging to rigid beliefs or rituals. It's about cultivating a way of being, a state of consciousness that allows us to experience the divine directly, not just in those special moments at dawn or dusk, but in every moment, in every encounter.
It's a shift from intellectual understanding to embodied knowing.
Yeah.
Not about accumulating knowledge, but about allowing that knowledge to transform us from the inside out.
And that's where the magic happens, right? It's not about becoming a scholar of Sikhism or memorizing Osho's every word. It's about taking these insights and applying them to our own lives, to our relationships, to the way we move through the world.
You know, what really struck me was how he pointed out that we often seek fulfillment in things outside ourselves.
Yeah.
Achievements, possessions,
Right.
relationships. But maybe true fulfillment comes from recognizing that divine spark within, that connection to something greater.
It's such a radical notion, isn't it?
Yeah.
That contentment and fulfillment aren't found in what we acquire or achieve, but in who we already are at our core.
You know, I'm not sure I entirely agree that words are always inadequate. Sometimes language can be a beautiful tool for spiritual expression.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a deeper truth to what he's saying. Maybe it's not about finding the perfect words, but about cultivating a state of being where words are no longer necessary. A state of pure being, overflowing gratitude, interconnectedness that transcends language altogether.
That's beautifully put. And perhaps that state, that way of being, is the ultimate expression of Siva, recognizing the divine in all things, not just in those we deem worthy or deserving.
It's a tall order.
It is.
But I think that's the invitation, to step into that possibility, to embrace the journey of awakening, even if we never fully arrive.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. It leaves us with a sense of possibility, of invitation, to continue exploring, to keep seeking, to go beyond the words and into the experience itself.
So to our listener, we leave you with this. If truth is beyond words, where else can it be found? How might you cultivate that state of presence of Amrit Vela in your own life? And how might that shift in perspective transform your relationships, your work, your very experience of the world?
A question worth pondering, a journey worth taking.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, keep diving deep.
Please like, share and subscribe.